Hey folks, how you doing? It's Adam Dan, and hope you guys are doing great. This pandemic, but have prayers for all of the affected and all who've had effects from COVID. COVID is a terrible thing. It's ravaged society, and so God bless anyone who's watching. God bless. We need as much love and as acceptance as possible. We need as much openness, and we need as much humanity more than ever before. And I want to talk about a few things with Major. I'll probably go on a rant and tangent, but I'm sure it'll relate to my main point. But what I want to talk about is, mostly is ego, right? So, um, different philosophers define ego in different ways. That you have Sigmund Freud with the super ego, with there's certain culturally dependent things that I can't do, although there's this unconscious desire, to do so. There's Friedrich Nietzsche, and so different philosophers have their own conception of ego. And if you look at the definition of ego online, Merriam Britannica, it'll tell you something very specific, but that not is not necessarily how other philosophers would define it. So it's important to know that and to keep that in mind. And for me, ego, and in the way that I want to teach this to you, is that, and many of you may know this, and it's just always refreshing to have a new perspective, and to people fill in the blanks. But ego. So I think that what are we? What are we? So there's reality with the lowercase r, and then there's reality with the uppercase r. And what I mean by that is the things that you see right now and that you perceive, including the screen, it's all in your head in the sense that this is a perception. That's a perception of information based on your brain. So what's around us? No, I don't, there's not a computer in front of me. All there is just information, particle waves, etc. So when information enters us through the aperture, through the eyes, this information goes in and gets decoded by the brain and turns it into this picture of something solid, so that makes sense to you, that has a sense of familiarity, so you don't feel threatened. So this is a welcoming image that you don't want to see. What you don't want to see, you only see what you believe. Because if you see what you don't want to see, you'd be horrified. So it's our perception is very much aligned with how our unconscious mind decodes the information and creates this image for you. Therefore, there is no objective reality. We all live in our own realities, and we all, are adopt to our own social conventions and our own psychosocial conventions. And linguistic and neurolinguistic perceptions. And it's all unique to us. All of our predispositions in our brains, all of our life experience combined, and everything that we know and believe and think and feel. So all of those things combine and culminate into all of, well, I guess you can say life experiences. And so these life experiences, when this information is going through your aperture, your brain aperture, said it kind of funny, but it decodes uniquely. So everyone is living in their own world. There's no one objective true reality. We have multitude of realities in our own brain. Yet, have you ever closed your eyes, right? And what do you see? People see black, dark, colors. Like right now, I see some red, blue, and green colors. Maybe because I'm staring at the computer screen, but that would explain it. But when you close your eyes, what are you seeing? It's like almost like you're peering into your brain, your unconscious, your this unconscious web. And this is very much how energy is. It's energy, and it turns into something solid, but it's not solid. Even in quantum physics, we know that someone's not really touching things, that there's particles that are giving off energy that are repelling energy away. So if I touch this, I'm not actually ever really touching my computer screen. It's just the energy, the electrical magnetic energy pushing against the space between my fingertips and the computer. I just put my hand on the computer. So what I'm saying is that we all live in our own social reality, and that these things are real with a lowercase r. That they're real in the sense that they're based on our observations and our five senses, and we're able to discern this is real, and it's a shared observation by other people. So confirmed. So you look at, can you prove things, and using reason, and reason is so important, and it goes hand in hand. But um, when you start talking about reason, what is reason? What is real? So I think we use reason based on the culmination of our life experiences, and with reason, and doing everything involved with the mindfulness. With mindfulness is a way to observe yourself. So without being yourself, and so that's the point of what I was trying to make. That everything around you is real, the lowercase r, but is it really that reality? The R, it looks like an R, kind of. But so what is real? What is the real what we can observe with our five senses? And you start thinking we only have five senses, so we're limited by what we can perceive. So I always say, what is more likely to be the real world? Is it the world of the dreams, the world of the eternal imagination and infinite unconscious, infinite consciousness and intelligence? What makes more sense? Is the real world the dream world of infinite possibilities, or this temporal world that's limited by this universe? Everything within this universe is all that could exist in this moment, within this sphere that we're able to observe. So we're all in our own frequencies, um, and with reason, right? So with every one of our life experiences, using using our affirmative judgment. But Plato and Socrates said it best, that contemplation, the best way to say it, when you look within yourself and you look inward. And I think that some of us, we have to start by looking inward. That when it comes to ego, who am I? What is myself? Who is myself? Well, that's not proper grammar. Who am I self? Who are I self? Who this self? Okay, but still. So what I'm saying is that, when it comes to that, um, reason and reality, that we only can reason what we have based on our life experiences. And what is the capital R? That seems like maybe the dream world. There's some sort of spirit world is the real world. As you hear, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Everything's a dream. Life is just a dream. But so you hear things like that, and there's a lot of truth to that, and it's very interesting that that's a carol. But so what I'm saying is that there's a real reality, right? That we can't perceive, that we're on our own frequencies, we're on our own radio waves. Like, you may have a radio and you may be in a spot or a location where there's plenty of radio stations, but if you're not tuned into that station, you are not hearing that radio signal. So it's a similar concept, that we are on this dimension, right? This level, and we're limited by our humanness, by our five senses, by everything with that. This is only a small fragment of reality. And like what I like to say is, it's a reflection of reality. Think of reality with a capital R as this projector. That's the physical thing, the projector, the divine, right? And so and then what we perceive and what we can observe in this world would be the projection from the projector. And it's an interesting analogy to know. And so, going back to ego, who am I? Who am I? So when it all comes down to it, if this is real, the lowercase r, then who am I? Who am I? I'm awareness. I am awareness. And we must become the observer. What are we at a fundamental level? We are the observer. But we don't always become the observer. We observe, but we need to be the observer to have this awareness of life and have this mindfulness, to think about your thoughts, to think from an outside perspective, to have this. And once you start reflecting, when you start to contemplate, you find an entirely different world that you use to better yourself. And so when you start talking about reality, capital R, lowercase r, and you start talking about reason, and you realize that sometimes people, they put reason with ego, and it becomes this egotistic clash. Like, what I mean by that is, look at a debate. Look at when two people debate each other, their ego. So when you start identifying with this ego, you must be the observer. But what happens is, right here, what happens is, when people get so fixated on their reality and their ego, their fake ego, right? This ego, then they lose sight of themselves. They lose what's within, because they identify with their conception of themselves. I'll say that again because it's pretty profound. people identify with their conceptions of themselves, which is their ego. Um, so I think that people we assume this role in this life, like it seems it's an illusion that we're these bodies. We're not a body, we're souls, right? And there's an intangible thing. And what is the one thing that we know for sure about its soul, that it observes, right? About like anything that's conscious, and we observe. So what are we at a fundamental level? Close your eyes, and what are we? What are we? We are awareness, we are consciousness. And that is one thing I know for sure. I can't prove that this world is real, but I can prove that consciousness is real, because who would be thinking this right now? You know, am I a robot or something? A deep fake government clone? Am I a hologram? No, no, sir, I am not a hologram. So, you know, people want to be right, and it really has created this dysfunction where, you know, when people debate, and you can even see this on online comments, or you can see it in any Senate debate, any, you know, Congress, you know, look at the presidential debate, you name it. So people want to be right, right? But they put their ego into things. That it's not about truth. It stops being about truth. It's because it's about who's right. It's about who's right. And this is such a toxic mentality. I'm right, you're wrong. Like, you know, it's childish. It's childish. I'm right, you're wrong. And you know, that's kind of how it is. And people put winning the debate over finding the truth. You know, if I was debating and someone nailed me, like, aha, well, I bet you didn't think about this, aha. And you know, I might change my opinion. I'd be like, okay, I'm fine, whatever. I change my opinion sometimes. It's actually a sign of intellectual humility to do so. But you know, there's some things you don't. But with you know, with reason, with perceiving, being in our own world, being in our own world, that it's so hard to communicate, right? With even we're so limited, just like the five senses, we're so limited by our you know, our five senses, our humanness, but we're so limited everything, by everything. We must be the observer, because when like when someone's debating, there'll be a name calling, there'll be name calling, and or it could be condescending behavior. But like I said, it's about being right. If we attach our identity into our behaviors, that our conceptions of ourselves, like, you know, if I think to myself, I'm a strong person, I'm a strong person, that's my conception of myself, I'm strong, right? And that becomes my conception. Now if something happens, let's say someone's like, oh, you're not strong, you're a weak little, and I'm just, it affects me because I, more than other people, I identify as being strong. It's part of my identity. So I think people are triggered at a personal level when they debate. And this is as simple as debating in person. Like I said, in a political setting, online comments, especially. I always whip out the popcorn when I read the comments for some of these videos I see. But so real, real, reality, real. Um, we understanding that limited by our senses, have to have that intellectual humility that we may not know all the answers. And conversely and paradoxically, that makes us wiser. That makes us more intelligent, because it shows that we're able to be open minded and be able to change our beliefs if we have evidence otherwise. And nowadays, there's debates that you could have evidence otherwise. You could literally have evidence otherwise, and they'll accuse you of doing the same thing, and they'll be like, yeah, but what about this? Or, but what about that? And so, you know, it's so hard sometimes when people are debating to have on the same page. And I think I've said this before, but as a general courtesy, um, you know, people should, you know, have the understanding that what they're saying could be completely false. I mean, where do we get our source of information? And when you start talking about first-hand source, second-hand source, et cetera, and you know, it's through the chain of just being diluted through people telling things, or throughout as it gets spread, you know, you lose sight of truth. And that's the whole point, that when we debate, it should be because we want to find the truth, not for our guy to win the debate or our girl to win the debate. Our guy, our girl, our Cavachon. I have a beautiful Cavachon. He's lovely. Beautiful dog. But it just matters that all that matters is that the truth is number one. That's what matters. So it's just so important that I think people identify with this conception of themselves, and it makes it personal and drags things in, like I said. So the key is to let go of the attachments of our identity, let go and just become the identity, become the observer, become awareness. And when you become awareness, become the observer, you will be yourself and you will come from an objective point of view. And that's what I'm saying, that when we debate, we should have an objective tone, an objective point of view, that this is the evidence, this is why I believe this is why I believe that. Well, there's still some things that are unprovable. I mean, there's some things that you just can't get a legit source for. If it's like from the mainstream news station or something, that if it's an obscure story or something no one wants to risk losing their credibility to publish, sometimes things don't they get published. I hear sometimes things, oh, show your source, show me your source, but sometimes things aren't always source. And but um debating, debating, putting truth first, and just identifying with awareness. And that's the fundamental point of this video. So stop, release these attachments to your self, your outer self, your ego, this ego, that you need not identify with this. If someone disrespects you or says something, you need not have this trigger reaction, and have to be affected by it. That if you're coming from this objective point of view, then you can speak and debate in a non-condescending, objective tone. It'll make you seem so much more intelligent. Make you seem so much more classy. It'll make you so much more likable. If people are watching, they'll any ongoers will have that likability also. So it's just important to be objective with, and even if you're being attacked, even if you're being lampooned, I love that word, lampooned, in social media, just to show that objectivity, that, not showing emotion, that I believe this, here's my reason for believing that, and that intellectual humility. Like Socrates said, I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. So, any wisest men or women out there, know that you are the wisest, just like Socrates, if you adhere to that principle, that we are, like I said, we are only limited for observations. And when I was talking about science before, I think there was this one person, I think she got the wrong idea. It was never about bashing science. It was just the word believe. Believe. I believe in the validity of science. I believe in the validity of science, no doubt. I mean, we can observe it, right? But to say I believe in science, traditionally when you hear the word I believe, you think, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I believe in, Allah, you name it, whatever that creator be. But to replace that, we believe, right? We believe in God, like in God we trust, and we believe in science. It's almost like this preface, right, to usher in this age of science worship, that like everything that someone can do, they'll check. Oh, I'm gonna check in the science. I'm gonna check in the science. But a lot of these are unpeer-reviewed, not non-replicated studies that anyone could publish a study, right? And someone could just be like, "Whoa, I'll follow the science," And so it's just a logical fallacy. It's a logical fallacy to assume that because you're getting information that's scientific, that it's true, that it's accurate, or it's replicatable. Um, yeah, never a bash of science. Just we are science, like our observations are limited to our five senses, and so all I'm merely saying is that truly reality with a capital R, because it's only reality insofar we can make sense of it with our observations. So I leave that with you, because it's a lot of things to think about, but just to summarize, and very importantly, just not identifying with the ego, um, letting not letting go of the ego when we debate. Have that detachment, and everything I said so far. But that was probably the main point. And I leave that with you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. And I hope you enjoy my finger pointing. I'm pretty good with the finger language, right? So, all right, thanks, bye.